Welcome back, everyone. Paul Chamberlain, the Air Force guy, here with Everything RVs podcast. And the purpose of this podcast is to bring you RVers out there, the information you need so that you can go out and make memories that last a lifetime. Now, before I get into it today, I want to go ahead and announce my sponsor, who is Airlock, for the ultimate in air quality in your RV. And I'll tell you what, I've installed it. By the way, I'll have a link down below for a discount code. I also have a video linked on how you can install it onto your RV air conditioner. And I tell you, they even have a product. I use this product in my office at work. And for whatever reason, I don't know what it is in my office, it just has odors when I come in the morning. But once I had this plugged in, I leave it run 24/7, odors gone. So check them out. I do love them as a sponsor, but I love them from a product standpoint. I will only advertise products that I believe in and that I feel actually do work. So, but without further ado, let's get on to what we're here today to learn about, and that is surge protection. Now, for years I have been telling people when they ask, do I need a surge protector? My answer is absolutely not. And the reason for that is you do not want just a surge protector. You need an EMS surge protection. Now, a lot of discussions go on out there on Facebook and the like. And again, I'm just an RV sales guy. What do I know? So here's what I've got for you today. I am so excited to bring him on here, Mr. RV Electricity. Let me add him in here. Mike, how you doing, sir? Appreciate you.
Very good, Paul. How are you?
Wonderful. Listen, so again, I just think this is probably one of the most important investments that people could invest in to protect their RVs. And I think there's no better person to explain it than you, right?
I've probably done more testing than anybody, and I test all the different products. So it's not like I just work for a single manufacturer. I test everything I can get my hands on. Yeah,
I'll tell you, it's getting worse and worse out there. And I tell you, and I talk from experience. I've been in the RV industry since 2001, and I can't tell you how many customers of mine have called. They've had the EMS surge protection, whether it was a Surge Guard, the Watchdog, the Progressive Industries, and they'll call me. They're at a campground. Hey, Paul, listen, my surge protection won't allow the electric to go to the RV. And I'm like, it's doing its job. Go get somebody from the campground and have them fix the problem at the pole. And then I'll tell them, and do yourself a favor. Do not take that thing out of the equation, because that's what they're going to tell you to do. They're going to tell you the problems with your piece. Do not take it out of the equation. And I can't tell you how many people, just went ahead and believe, because I'm not an electrician, right? So what do I know? They went ahead and believed the electrician, the quote electrician. You know how these guys that come out there, they're electricians, right? And they take it out of the equation. The next thing I know, they're at our shop getting something repaired. But let's go ahead and talk about, in your mind, because you understand these things inside and out. I know enough to be dangerous. I can't explain it. I'm looking at some of these things out there. They're having 10,000, 14,000 joules. How the heck is that? And they're selling for $69.
Well, here's the thing. I've been doing testing. I was always a diagnostician. I've been doing this stuff very professionally as a career job for 50 odd years. And I've been experimenting with electricity going on 65, 66 years. I've been doing this a very, very long time. And so I was always worried about blowing things up. In fact, I get paid to blow things up. So I get paid to overvoltage things, overcurrent things, overheat things. And this is now my little lab thing that I do as part of my retirement gig, as it were. What you don't want to do is become an experiment while you're on a campground. And that's the real issue out here. You don't want this. It can be really ugly.
So now, what do you recommend? Well, let me back up. Why don't you tell us what kind of testing you have done on? Let's talk about the top three, and that would be Surge Guard, Watchdog, and Progressive Industries. And let's walk down them. Let's start at what you would say would be number three. Let's start at the Progressive Industries. and why you feel that they're an adequate EMS protection.
Right. Now, SurgeGuard, Progressive Industries, they were the very, very first ones to do this. And in fact, they coined the phrase EMS for electrical management system. But first, let's just do a real quick explanation. You have what I would consider to be basic MOV-based, MOV-based units. And they're basically the same thing as a surge strip in your house for your computer, but bigger. They don't really look at over voltage or under voltage or grounds or anything, but they can stop electrical spikes from coming in from lightning, okay? Now, what the guys at Progressive did is they came up with this thing. They said, we should protect it from over voltage and under voltage and open ground kind of thing. And so they did really, really well with that. And they kind of invented that whole industry out there. And it does do a good job of checking for too much voltage, much over 128, 130 volts, or anything below 104 volts, also looks for an open ground. And it also includes the MOV-based devices, what you call joules of actual surge protection. Although I hate the word surge, it's really a voltage spike. And that's something that comes in from when lightning hits the ground, somewhere in a campground. All the wiring in a campground is like a big antenna just waiting to pick up a lightning strike and send it to everybody. You don't want that inside of your RV. So they have a really good solid unit. Seems to work just fine for what it is.
Okay. And now let's go, I guess, to what you coin as the second best, and that'd be the Watchdog.
Yeah, the Hughes Watchdog does that, all of the above. Plus they have Bluetooth capability. Now they've got the angry red dog that sits there on the face of this thing, when things go bad. Some people say first off, it's a little too obvious because people know where to come steal your surge protector, as it were. But their Bluetooth connection is really, really quite good. And they've had that for several years. I've used that as examples in my classes themselves. I'm not sure. Now, the one thing that they do have, which I think is the Achilles heel of this, they have a replaceable MOV device. So what happens, the actual MOVs get worn out after they take so many hits. Each joule is equivalent to 1 watt-second of energy. So after it gets hit enough times, a little light will go out. Now, normally, if you have most of these units, you would send them back to the manufacturer and they would give you another one or whatever. They have a field replaceable module that you can put in there. You can buy for $50 and keep going. However, I am not sure that that's the best way to do things because you can have other components stressed beyond just the MOV devices. So you may replace the MOV devices but with a little module the kit that you can field replace for $50. I'm not sure that it will guarantee that this whole thing is working without going through calibration again. And there's no way you can calibrate it in the field. You'd have to have something like my lab to do it.
Okay. So now the one that you recommend is the SurgeGuard.
Right. SurgeGuard seems to be a real solid one. I've had a ton of testing with this. I've tried overcurrent, under voltage, every kind of protection out there, of things out there. I've taken it, plugged it into a 50 amp service and just shorted the wires together to see if I could blow it up. I have not been able to blow one up yet, although I've tried. And the 30 amp one's I've tested them in excess, I think, of 250, 260 volts. They will not let that voltage through to your 120 volt RV on the 30 amp one. Plus, they pioneered and have a really, really interesting thing that's basically the RV side, or what I would call downstream open neutral protection. And what that does is that if you're on a regular 50 amp service, it's 120/240 volts. If the neutral opens up, that 240 volts no longer divides evenly into 120 and 120 volts. The one side could go down to 40 volts. The other side could swing up to 200 volts coming into your RV. Guess what you'll have plugged into the 200 volt side? The expensive stuff. And that can just blow up things in seconds. So I think of all of them, like I said, the ones from Southwire SurgeGuard, I think has the best engineering, followed by the guys at the Watchdog product, followed by the guys from Progressive. And then there's a variety of other wannabes and really cheap junk out there too.
Well, see, that's the thing. How is it that you have these knockoffs for less than $70 and they're good up to 10,000 joules? How? And then you look at a Watchdog, a Progressive, or a SurgeGuard, and they're only like 4,000 or 5,000 joules.
Right. And the key here is it's not just the joule rating is not just the only thing too. You've got to have better engineering, better better relays in it and contactors and such. And here's what I've seen. I know now I've never done anything with the guys from Hughes in terms of looking at UL testing, but I know that the testing that they've done for Southwire, for the SurgeGuard units, this thing gets smacked in a lab with basically lightning bolts to make sure it'll survive. A couple of the Chinese ones that are these super cheap knockoffs wouldn't even survive the first test. They basically just blew up. So basically, it's like buying a knockoff suit. It's okay. You want real one, you go Armani. Or do you wear Armani suits, Paul? Or? No, me neither. But I'm just grabbing something out of the air.
I don't even wear Armani fedoras.
Do they even make them?
Good correct.
Who knows? Who knows? All I'm saying is the big three that I've used and tested a lot have gone through extensive testing, not just by me, but the manufacturers to make sure that they're safe and reliable. And you can put anything together and call it whatever you want and sell it for cheap on Amazon. And Amazon is really, really bad about not testing anything. They can put stuff that's completely wrong and dangerous out there. I get people calling me all the time about this stuff, and I'm going, "Oh no, I've tested that. That's if you plug that into your RV, you'll blow your RV up." You can buy it right on Amazon.
You're absolutely right. The thing is, you go ahead and you go on to let me pull this up for you. You go on here to Amazon and you look at products. You put in best RV surge protection, right? And they all come up, right? But yeah, here's one for $59, and it's GearGo for up to 12,000 joules. I mean, how in the heck? And it's $60.
Yeah, I know. Believe me, I know this. Okay, so do you know the phrase Chinese bombs, tire bombs?
Well, I'm glad you bring that up because I want to get a tire expert in because I don't believe there's such a thing as Chinese tire bombs.
The older ones were really bad, the early ones. And the same thing we would have with, we have the same thing. I'm a pro sound guy. You have a microphone that looks exactly like a real Shure microphone that you'd pay $125 for, and you can buy for $25. Guess what? It doesn't sound like it, but it looks like it. Same way with all of these other products. These guys just knock them off, and away you go.
But see, now let me ask you a question. What risk are they running by buying a $60 quote EMS surge protector, because they're showing on there they're good for high and low voltage, open ground, open neutral, miswired, all this stuff. But the fear that I would have, whereas the top three that you named, in the event there is an oversurge at your box, it's not going to let that power continue on to camping.
Correct. And that's the thing. I think all you're doing is you're buying something that makes you feel good, but I can't guarantee it's going to actually stop that surge from getting through or protect you if the voltage goes too high or too low. And I've only done limited amounts of testing on them, but they've got a lot less components in them. And we had the same problem maybe 5-10 years ago, where you could go buy knockoff versions of your phone chargers. So instead of buying an iPhone Apple Search, charger, you would go buy these cheap things you could get for $5. If you take them apart, they're missing all of the protection circuits inside of them. And this is where people have actually died standing in a puddle or being in a shower and reaching out and touching their phone while it was plugged into the wall. And it's because the charger, even though it looked identical, didn't have all of the safety stuff. I actually did a study on that. But again, Apple stopped my study this once it determined it was not an Apple product. And they said, well, that's because they're buying knockoff clones.
Okay. Well, so now what testing have you been around for the SurgeGuard?
For the SurgeGuard stuff, I've done everything: over voltage, under voltage, open ground, over current, everything you could possibly want to do. I've done on the SurgeGuard stuff.
But see, now, do you want to discuss the visit you did with SurgeGuard?
Well, I can. It was actually really interesting because they had first come out with this open neutral downstream protection. And, they were bragging about this. And of course, I've got all their engineers from all these companies on speed dial because we have a lot of fun. And I called them up and I called up BS on them. I said, I think that's a bunch of baloney. I don't know how you're doing it. You can't do it, blah, 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 blah. And they said, we are confident enough that we will fly you from Maryland down here on our nickel, put you up in a room, pick you up with a car, and feed you a nice Italian dinner if all you'll come do is see this thing. And guess what? They had it in the room. As soon as they showed me the basics, I figured it out. And then we signed an NDA and I went back in the Skunk Works to see, and they actually have a Skunk Works. We could see how this stuff worked. So I'm not at liberty to discuss all the inner workings of it, but it does work. And I've done it a bunch of times here in my own lab now. It's a pretty cool algorithm. It really is, but it's a patent.
Well, so now my question to you is, when we're talking about these SurgeGuards, as you can see, when they go on the Southwire website, they have a SurgeGuard Basic, Surge Plus, and the full protection.
The full protection is what you would call an EMS
Correct.
unit. And that has a big relay in it, and it measures the voltage and current and all those other kind of things. And the SurgeGuard Basic you can get for less than $100, probably $75. And that's equivalent. That's just basically just only the MOV devices, MOVs. And that's just looking for a voltage spike. Now, those kind of devices, any of these that are MOV based, or the basic surge protectors, cannot protect you against over voltage, won't warn you if there's a hot skin problem, won't disconnect on low voltage. None of them do. They can't. I mean, they're just a passive unit with these little MOV devices, in the box.
You're telling me exactly what I try to explain, and I don't explain in that detail. Again, I know enough to be dangerous. I just tell people, listen, you don't want these. We have them hanging on our shelf. This is the one you want because it gives you the full protection. What good does it do you? You have somebody spending $20, $30, $50, $100,000 on a camper. What is the problem? You're spending 1% of the cost of the unit or less to give you the protection you need.
Right. Now, here, I'll tell you something else that's really interesting because I've done a lot of research on this. You can actually stack two of these together if you want.
Okay.
So let's say that you've got a surge protector that's built in. Not all of them plug on the post. They'll get one that's built in. Now, when it's built in, it's usually part of, for instance, a generator, an automatic transfer switch, and it'll also have surge protection. Now, that thing's like $800 for that thing. If you have a voltage spike come in from the outside world, like a nearby lightning strike, it can blow that thing up, and now you're dead in the water. But what you can do is you can go get one of these cheap $75 ones, put that on the pedestal. So now if there is a lightning hit, it will tend to blow that one up. So that one will help protect the more expensive one downstream. So some people think they're going to interfere with each other. That's a bunch of crapola, baloney, whatever expletive you would like. Because I've done this tons of times, and I put GFCIs in a series. Any of these urban myths, first off, I go understand how they work. Then I set up a test. Then I go do the test. I gather some empirical data. I send it to my buddies out there in the world, and we say, "Oh yeah, that's a bunch of crapola."
Well, so I think you made a good point, though. So you're saying you just need the surge protection part of it if you already have the built-in one.
If you have the built-in, what we would call the EMS, okay, because many of the larger ones will have that, then it is completely possible you just add the basic surge protector out on the pedestal itself, because its job is to help prevent these voltage spikes from coming in. It doesn't do anything to help you with over or under voltage or open ground or anything, but the one that's built inside of your RV, that will protect you from over voltage, under voltage, and all the other sort of things. And I've confirmed this with all the manufacturers.
Well, I tell you that, and that's something new that I just learned. This is why I like having these interviews and learning more about these things. So why would somebody want to have one hardwired versus one that's portable?
Well, first off, the portable ones can grow legs or wings and leave in the middle of the night. And so there's that little issue there. But now one of the reasons why I like a portable full protection EMS, you go to a campground. This is what you don't want to do. You go to the campground, you and your significant other have a few words in exchange while you're backing this thing into a thing this way, no, the other this way, that kind of stuff. And then you level it out, you bring out the slides, you hook up the water, and a lot of times the very last thing you do is you plug in for power. And guess what? If the power's bad, you're kind of stuck. But what you can do with a portable one is you can take that, you get their little golf cart to drive you out there, and you can just plug in and say, I'm not going to accept this pedestal because it's showing an open ground or it's showing 140 volts or whatever. And you say, I'm not going to do this. You get a guy out there right now and you show me that it's fixed, and then I'll go ahead and take this site. Now, I know that some people say, well, I've got to take it no matter what because, I've had this spot reserved for a year or whatever. But if that's the case, run off your generator. I mean, therein lies the problem. You are risking doing tens of thousands of dollars worth of damage to your RV if something goes wrong. And the problem is not all those parts are instantly available. A lot of these things, I've talked to people that say, oh yeah, there's an 18-month backlog on getting that refrigerator. 18-month. So, you can lose your entire camping season plus if you just keep going. Yeah.
Well, that's a great recommendation is for people to check the pole before they even get there. The other thing is, and I've ran into this also. I've had people, they have a 30 amp camper.
Right.
They go into a campground. The 30 amp plug is bad. So I always recommended them to bring a 50 to 30 amp adapter.
Right.
And then plug into the 50 amp side, and then everything was fine.
Right. And you want to know, is that safe? Is it legal? Is it crazy? How should I begin?
Well, I mean, I think you're paring it down from 50 to 30. You're okay.
Oh, okay. No. Here's the deal. Okay. So first off, if you were to go read the National Electrical Code book, and let me tell you, this looks like the Holy Bible written by a bunch of lawyers. It is crazy how much detail. So if you don't have a neutral wire, you have a non-grounded current carrying conductor. You don't have a ground wire, you have a grounded non-current carrying conductor. I mean, it's that kind of stuff. You go down through all of that stuff, and it just looks crazy. Now, if you were to follow code exactly, you have a 50 amp breaker. The job of the breaker is to protect the wiring immediately after that. You only have a 30 amp wire with 50 amps behind it. Now, you would think that'd be dangerous, but it really not if the rest of the RV is okay, because guess what? The first circuit breaker it hits in your load center inside of your RV, a 30 amp master breaker. So even though this is I would call a minor code infraction, everybody makes these things. The 50 amp receptacle, the 1450R, is superior to the 30 amp, the TT30. And one of the reasons for that is, and I found some documentation on this a few years ago, that 30 amp receptacle was never NEMA certified. It was designed by the camping industry, and the things are too short on it. It was only rated for 300 insertions before it was worn out. 300 insertions.
Wow.
So why do you think these things fall apart all the time? Just because they're never built for that sort of thing. The other side, but don't get me started on the other side, the twist lock, that was designed in 1939 by Hubbell. And it was designed for sewing machine factories where people were sewing together garments, and they would reach up and they would have a power line up above them in the ceiling, and they would reach up and twist them and lock them in. It was never designed to be outside. It was never designed to be on a vertical surface.
Okay.
So you've got a bunch of stuff that sort of kind of works, but only if everything's perfect. If everything's perfect, it works. But if it's not perfect, it doesn't work, which is why I see a lot of people. In fact, I carry, and I've got a 30 amp camper. I carry a 50 to 30 adapter because guess what? I've been in situations where I wouldn't plug my my electric shaver into that thing. You just don't trust it. So I've far safer to plug it into the 50 amp with the adapter. Now remember, there's nothing in there to stop it from going all, burning that cable up. I've had a few people that have replaced the 30 amp breaker inside of their RV with a 40 or a 50. And now they've created a very dangerous situation because that 30 amp shore power cord, right, you can be shoving 50 amps through that thing, and it will melt down and catch on fire.
Wow. So what do you say to people? Because I know years and years ago, people that had a 50 amp camper, they made this plug that plugged into a 30 and a 20 and went to 50.
Won't work.
It won't work. Okay.
No, it won't work. And I'll tell you why. Because by code, and I won't bring my other camera in, but by code, that 20 amp receptacle on that pedestal has to be GFCI protected.
Okay.
And if you plug this thing into a 30, which does not have GFCI protection, and a 20 with GFCI protection, it'll trip every time, instantly, with the slightest load on it. So then I see people go in there and they're bypassing the GFCI. You understand the liability that you put yourself in if somebody gets electrocuted? The GFCI is there to protect people.
What about the adapter that goes from, you plug it in, it's 50 and it comes out to 230s?
That actually is safe. Okay. That actually is safe as long as what you do is you plug into it with like two campers. And I've done that same thing. In fact, a couple of years ago, Ford loaned me their F-150 Power Boost pickup truck. Real pretty truck. They said it was a contractor truck. This was not a contractor truck. This was a pavement princess, baby, with all the leather and accoutrements you could want. But it had a 7,000 watt inverter generator built into it and a twist lock plug in the back. It was a 4-wire twist lock like a generator. And so I broke it out to a 1450 and split it to a pair of 30s and then used it to run two separate RVs for a whole weekend. It was really cool. It was really neat. Yeah, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Again, as long as you don't undersize your cords. I had one guy say, I don't like those shore power cords are so heavy. He had put adapters and adapted a 50 amp down to a 15, then ran a long 100-foot or so Harbor Freight orange extension cord and then adapted it back up and plugged it in and couldn't figure why his voltage was dropping down to like 80 volts when he would turn anything on. And he says, and its cord's getting pretty hot, where it plugs in. I went, yeah, we don't. And I say, if my favorite saying from engineering, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. And, and that's the thing. I want this to happen. I wish this would happen. I'd like this to happen. I'm going, sorry, guys, you can't beat physics. Physics is physics.
Well, so now speaking of that, because that's one thing that Southwire has on theirs that some of these other don't, where if the plug gets too hot, then it'll go ahead and cut off the power. They
used to on some of their older ones. I'm not sure they still have that on their newest ones. I would have to go look and confirm. I know that they were doing it on some, and then I think they got rid of it. They said it was too hard to calibrate and keep it running in the field. But maybe they put it back in. I'll have to ask my engineer.
Okay, yeah. So I know. Yeah, again, I know it used to be, and you're
it right. Used to be, right. It used to be, but what they did, I think they replaced it with neutral over current protection. So if it felt the neutral was too hot, that it was drawing too much current, it would shut it down rather than measuring the temperature. So another thing that happens in campgrounds, Let's say that you have a pedestal, the 50 amp on it is not wired to 240 volts. It's just wired to a single 120 volt line that's jumpered across. And where this happens, I kept thinking, why would somebody do this? And now I know why. So let's say you got an older campsite and you just had, especially if it's a state, campground or whatever, and you've got 120 volt wiring running all over the place and you have 30 amp pedestals. Well, what are people demanding? 50 amp pedestals. And the guy says, okay, I can swap that in. I'm a work camper, blah, blah, blah. They put it in and they simply jumper that one hot line coming in over into the two outlets now, or the two contacts on your 50 amp. Now, what that means is now your current between your two legs are additive and not subtractive. So if you're drawing 40 amps on the one side and 30 amps on the other side, completely possible, instead of being 10 amps is what would be drawn through the neutral in a properly wired receptacle, it's now got 70 amps, 80 amps. Wow. And the contacts were not designed to do that. And this is why they burn up. And not just the contacts, the neutral wiring all the way into your automatic transfer switch, all the way into your load center, all of those white wires. If you go in there and you open that thing up and the white insulation is brown, guess what that means? That sucker's been overheated because you were plugged into a campground that had cheated and did not wire your 240 volt with two pole split phase. They just jumpered single poles, single phase in it.
Wow. Okay.
And I do this on my desk. I got guys say, I don't believe it. I'm going, we've known about this for 125 years, more, whatever, since the invention of polyphase power. I don't make this stuff up. This is just in the engineering textbooks if you have guts enough to read them.
Right. Well, listen, I do appreciate all the information that you have to offer. And this is something I felt was important for us to get out to the folks out there. And I appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I would love to teach.
Certainly. Well, listen, you have a great week and weekend. And I'm sure we'll catch up again one day.
You too, Paul. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.